Hello. Oh, that's nice. See, hybrid. Right, so I'm going to kick off our next panel session, which is all about the challenges of developing sustainable technologies, really critical phase, as you all know, in innovation. And it's hosted by our brilliant colleague from Manchester Met, Chris Taylor. Over to you, Chris.
Morning, everybody. So we've already met Dan, but I'll quickly ask people to do an introduction for themselves so I don't make a mess of it. So Marilyn, then Iain, and then Dan, if you could introduce yourself again.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Marilyn Comrie, and I'm the CEO of a new innovation asset called Manchester Innovation Activities Hub. It's a £4 million net zero industrialisation centre, which will support innovative SMEs to develop new prototypes and new products for the net zero market, which globally is massive. We're talking about trillions. It will also specialise in delivering electrification, including hydrogen skills training, and ensure that those companies have the workforce that they need in order to scale up and grow. So it's a one-stop shop approach, and the MIA, as we call it, Manchester Innovation Activities Hub, is a spin-out company from the Blair Project, which is a e-motorsport STEM education provider that my son Niall set up when he was 18 years old, and we're 9 on Sunday. Happy birthday.
Hi everybody, my name's Iain Henshaw. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of FutureBay Limited. At FutureBay, we've developed a technology platform that can save the energy required for cooling loads by up to 50%. We're applying this in sort of fairly large scale cooling loads such as data center cooling, commercial air conditioning. And our energy savings come from waste heat recovery from those systems, and also shifting those cooling loads from times of peak usage to off-peak to utilise sort of lower carbon electricity and make use of lower nighttime ambience as well. I have a 20-year plus history in developing technology and intellectual property in private sector startups in the alternative energy industry. The technologies I've worked on span thermal energy storage, high pressure compressed air energy storage, micro combined heat and power, to name a few of them.
Hello again, Dan.
Yeah, hello again. I'll keep short and sweet. So Dan Dickinson, Energy Innovation Agency. So we're finding new innovators, validating them, helping them commercialise and getting them deployed in Greater Manchester.
Excellent, thank you. So this panel is looking at the challenges of developing green sustainable technology. So I'm going to start off with a kind of a big picture kind of question to kind of set the scene a little bit. So Marilyn, if I go to you first, the 2018 Sanson Innovation Audit suggested that 50% of the region's SMEs aren't innovating. So quite a worrying statistic, but I suppose kind of 2 point this, A is a little bit worrying, but why do we think that might be? What barriers do you think there are that's making that be the situation?
Yeah, so what I'd like to start off with first is to say that MIA, Manchester Innovation Activities Hub, is a concept that was designed by an SME for SMEs. And it was based on our lived experience as a Greater Manchester small business. We only employ 10 people, 10 to 14 people, but actually we wanted to innovate, but actually it's really difficult navigating the innovation ecosystem. It's a bit like going into a sweet shop. There's so much of it, and actually what you really need is help to understand where are the opportunities and how do you get started. So a lot of them are not aware that, you know, the country is starting out down the road of battery manufacturing. We never used to manufacture batteries. We used to just import them from China because it was cheaper. We've learned as a result of the lockdown that we need to become more self-sustaining, if you like. So now there's a big push on to develop battery manufacturing capability in this country. But what do you need for that? You need supply chains. And what you also need to do is to support SMEs that are struggling at the moment, whether they're in the chemical industry sector and help them to repivot. But you do need that one-stop shop approach, because otherwise you can wear out a lot of shoe leather trying to find where can I get the help and support I need. And what they need is that knowledge of where are the opportunities, how can I repivot, who will help me to do that, because you can't do it on your own. So you need to work collaboratively, whether it's with universities, other SMEs who can become part of that supply chain. And then lastly, the other thing that you really need to do is to be able to draw down the funding, because innovating ain't cheap. And currently, in terms of Greater Manchester, we punch below our weight. We don't draw down as much Innovate UK funding as our competitors in the West Midlands, in the North East. They do particularly well. And so MIA is going to change that. So I will expect to see in the next 5 years that landscape will have changed. And, you know, we'll probably be close to 80% of SMEs in Greater Manchester innovating, because we made it easier.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marilyn. Iain, have you got any thoughts on the barriers that are kind of stopping businesses from taking on these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Marilyn touched on the cost of innovating. You know, the flip side of that is, you know, what goes with money is time. Time for innovation. You know, for startups, you're in a pre-revenue generating position. You've got limited investment. You've got a very short runway with which to do your technical development, protect your IP. Gear up for manufacture, do the marketing, and you know, innovators, we often come from a technology background with scientists, engineers. We end up having to wear an awful lot of hats that we might not feel comfortable wearing. You might have identified an opportunity that your target market's not actually aware of. We've engaged with companies to say, you know, do you realize you could make, you know, this system that you're using more efficient? They, you know, they're aware of how much electricity they're using, but they couldn't tell you, you know, could that be improved upon by these subsystems? So there's an education program that you have to get through with them. And it takes time as well to access the decision makers in those industries. You know, the tale of woe from our past is on the compressed air energy storage technology that we developed. We spoke to National Grid about this. They were looking to move away from flooded lead acid battery storage for backing up switchgear on all of their substations. They already had air compressors on site. They already have a lot of the infrastructure you need to make this work. Very interested, could see the benefits of it. So we did a pilot demonstration with them, absolutely delighted with it. And they said, yeah, okay, we'd like to go ahead with this. It took us 4 years from the completion of that trial to get onto their framework agreement and get the first order from them. When you're a startup, you've got limited, you know, you've got limited means available. 4 years is an awfully long time to be on half rations. So, you know, time is critical. There are other things as well that sort of affect that cash flow issue that you get associated with time. If you're developing new technologies and sort of like in the power sector, you often rely on components such as semiconductors, motor drives, rare earth magnets for generators. Lead times from these can go from a month to 18 months like that. So you end up having to put some of that investment money into stock, you know, with no guarantee of success. So time and money, you know, that they're
the key ones.
Probably the biggest barriers, and skills gaps as well. Some of the expertise you need to develop these technologies. There just aren't enough graduates out there in them. Power electronics is a key one. There's only about 10 graduates a year in power electronics in the Northwest. It's probably not got the uptake because it's not a new cutting edge sort of side of academia. But 10 years ago, when I was recruiting power electronics engineers, quite frankly, they could have named their price. So we have to go out to consultants to fill those skills gap, which then adds on to the cost of developing these technologies.
Great, interesting. And Dan, obviously you're very active in this space and work with a lot of SMEs that are trying to take some of these products to market. You got anything to add in that?
Yeah, I suppose just building on, if you know, the start with existing businesses and why aren't they innovating? I think some of it actually comes down to the skills gap we've got right now. So if you take renewable heating as an example, you've got heating engineers, you know, crying out for qualified trained staff now. And if businesses like Green Economy come along and say, why don't you look at heat pump installation or other technology, they're saying, well, I'm already short staff. I'm already flat out. I've got to take a risk in either recruiting a different kind of staff or training my existing staff. And maybe I don't know the market as well. So without the support, businesses see innovation as a risk. And what we need to do is be removing some of those barriers in terms of risk and their confidence in that actually we devote this time, this money, this resource, there's a greater chance of success.
Yeah, okay. So I think Steve mentioned carrot and stick earlier, but
yeah,
looking more at the opportunity. Marilyn, you mentioned kind of ecosystems and that kind of approach, but I'm also aware that I was going to say LEP, GM Business Board.
Yeah.
Which I just wrote down from Steve earlier. So been rebranded. What's the role of the LEP and GMCA in kind of leading some of this activity within Greater Manchester?
Yeah. So I was on the website yesterday, and I believe we've got a new devolution deal with government, which means we'll get a single grant and we can decide how we're going to spend it. But I think the role of the GMCA and the business board, which I sit on, is really around policy. How can we develop new policy initiatives? And the important bit about policy is not the pieces of paper. It's actually how it drives behaviours. So, for instance, if we've decided that Greater Manchester will be net zero by 2038, it really does help, and that's the policy. It really helps to really focus minds, and then you will find it helps to attract investment, because the investment piece, as we've heard, the money, the time and the money is really, really important for that. And I think the other thing that we really need to do, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in the next couple of days, is really to promote success stories. So we have a success story that we can't share at the moment, but being able, and you know, just so that you know, I'm a single parent mother of 3 boys, and we've been able to start up, grow. It did help that I have a chemistry degree, but start up and grow. And actually it's promoting stories like this so that people don't think you need to be, I was a graduate, but you need to be a graduate, or you need to be brain of Britain. You don't. You just need to come to me. You just need to be willing to tinker, look at, you know, these new technologies. We want to be able to commercialise some of the research coming out of the Manchester Fuel Cell Innovation Centre, the Graphene Engineering Innovation Centre, AMPI, the Advanced Manufacturing Productivity Institute in Rochdale. They will research it. We will put it into the hands of SMEs who will be able to make great use of it and then turn it into commercial products. But I think the other thing that I would like from the policy is that going forward, we earmark funding to help SMEs to be able to take on somebody in their business who is their innovation expert. So they have the time to actually explore innovation activities, which doesn't stop the SME from doing what it's already doing, but actually it means the SME has the resource to invest in it. And for our own, in terms of our own success story, it's gone to 0 to millions. And that's in a very short space of time, 4 years. So promoting those kind of success stories that help people to overcome whatever mental barriers they might have, that I can't do it too. And the other thing I would really want to see from the GMCA and the business board is more diversity and inclusion within our innovation ecosystem. There isn't enough. And again, I think that is about people's belief systems, that you have to be a particular type of person to innovate. Now, as long as you've got a shed and you're happy to tinker, we will help you to innovate. And that has to be the message going forward.
Just taking one of those points forward then around the commercialisation, I would probably argue in broad terms that research and development is probably technology driven, but innovation is probably more market driven. Would you agree with that? And how would you think about how we can help SMEs identify and exploit the market opportunity?
Definitely. I think there's a real risk of people working very hard in their specialism, not necessarily understanding the target market. We had one recently where it was a fantastic product in its own right, but for sort of wider PR reasons, their end market weren't interested. It was seen as a risk for them. So we're actually helping them look at a new market. It's something we see really important, that the earlier in that journey you can speak to or engage with your potential customer, which is not always easy to do, But so it's not always going in for the hard sell, but if you can have a relationship of some kind with your end customer, you make sure you're designing a product fit for them. So I mentioned AI earlier. There's some incredible AI technology around there around building management efficiency, but unless it's delivered in a platform in a way that people who are making the purchasing decisions can understand it, you know, if not everyone's an energy manager, then it's somewhat redundant because it won't be deployed at scale, and that's what we need. So that would be a key point for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Iain, when you talked about the kind of barriers, you talked a little bit there about intellectual property.
Yeah.
And I know we've got certain people in the room in this space, but I find it a really interesting area. When do you think a business or an innovator needs to start thinking about protecting intellectual property?
I mean, patent protection, you know, you'll struggle to get investment without the security that patent protection gives the technology. You know, you can't disclose your invention and then to the world and then patent it. So really, you need to look about getting something filed before you release what you're doing into the public domain. You know, if you haven't got a patent, you'll struggle to get venture capital funding if you wanted to float, or that would limit your opportunities of how you're going to then fund your development and delivery. It also will curtail sort of the types of ways that you can monetize your technology as well. You know, licensing, trade sale, that all requires you to have something tangible and protected that somebody's going to buy. That's what they're purchasing, that intellectual property. But you know, having said that, the importance of patents, there are other types of intellectual property as well that are as strong, even not, you know, if not stronger than patents. Things like know-how that exists in your innovators' heads, secret recipes. There's a good reason that in the adhesives world they don't patent what they do, because it's very difficult to reverse engineer an adhesive. It's very difficult to reverse engineer code flashed onto a microchip. Those kinds of things are your intellectual property as well as your supply chain, your customer base, your network. So I think it's, I personally would get something on file as soon as possible, then add to it. You also have to be aware that your IP can become a constraint as well, especially if you're raising funding against it. I mean, we've gone through 2 AIM listed flotations in projects that I've done in the past, and you raise it against a piece of intellectual property. You're at an early stage of development. A few years down the line, you might find the core part of that main patent, actually that's not working so well for you. You need to pivot away from it. And there can be a reluctance with innovators to do that, because that's what you've raised the funding against. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword sometimes, patents, but you know,
obviously IP is expensive, and Marilyn, you talked a lot about support and ecosystems. So quick one for you, Dan, with your kind of background in this, but from a Greater Manchester ecosystem perspective, what is the role of the kind of public agencies and institutions that can support innovation? Where do you think they can really add value, or where do you think they could perhaps improve what they do?
Yeah, I think, you know, the agency wouldn't exist without local authority being on board, without our university partners being on board. And I think a big part of that is overcoming key barriers on that innovation journey. For example, I invent something in my shed, I discover it's the best thing since sliced bread, it saves 50% of whatever you're doing. You need a third party to verify that. No one's going to take your word for it until you go through the accreditation routes. They're convoluted. You know, the universities have got testing facilities, expertise in just about anything going here in Manchester. So having them on board is fantastic. The local authorities, you know, they've got a huge public estate that needs to decarbonise, and there's so much work going on in that space, but also the outreach they can do to businesses. The more businesses we can get on board, you know, we can get some economies of scale going. And there's some exciting projects in that space right now. So how can we drive down the cost? But something we're really keen to do through our case studies, through our projects, is to deliver something that other businesses in the region can look at the business case that we've created or that we've demonstrated to inform and make their decisions as well. We have quite a lot of foreign-owned businesses here in Manchester. So sometimes it's really helpful to have a local use case that they can go to their, you know, overseas and say, look, invest in Manchester, invest in the Manchester site. It's going to save you a lot of money. So I think, developing that business case that scale. We're all about scale here. We don't want to do just one-off niche projects that don't have any replicability.
Yeah, that's something obviously you're very passionate about, Marilyn, is about telling the story more, getting the
Yeah.
good stories out there and kind of inspiring other ones to follow. Just before we kind of go to your sort of questions, if I just ask generally individually, if you could give any advice to an innovator that's looking to develop in this or a product or service in this area, what advice would you give to them? Marilyn, if I could go to you.
I would say you've got to be really resilient, not to give up, to find out what is out there, and then to partner with a couple of other businesses. I don't think it's possible to innovate on your own. So I call it find your tribe. And then together as a tribe, as a family, then you can move forward. But they should be complementary, not the same as you. So they've got areas of strength where you have weaknesses, and then together, especially if one of you feels it's not worth going on, the other one can say no, the other company can say yeah, let's keep going, and together you can find more opportunities rather than trying to do it on your own.
Fantastic, thanks, Marilyn. Iain?
Yeah, building on what Marilyn said, I'd say, you know, your sense of humour is going to be very important to you. You're going to hit an awful lot of obstacles,
Yeah.
And it's important that you don't get too upset about that. You don't give up at that stage. You might have to pivot the market that you're trying to sell to, and you'll probably have to evolve your route to market several times. You know, your business plan should be as innovative as your technology. You know, sometimes build it, sell it. Yeah, it's difficult with new tech because you're at a price premium. You need to find new and different ways of making sure that's not a barrier to marketing your products.
Thanks, Iain. And Dan?
Yeah, just to add on that, I suppose I would say, you know, startups and small businesses are so resource and time poor, but it's so critical to do, you know, some forward thinking, get the business plan down, you know where you want to be, because so many opportunities we're seeing in this space, funding, investment windows are really short. And if you can't really succinctly put down on paper what you offer and where you want to be, quite often businesses will miss out on those opportunities. So it's a lot easier to support businesses to take advantage of opportunities if they're agile and ready to go and know where they want to be.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think we've got a couple of minutes left if anyone's got any questions. Is it about hydrogen?
No. So I'm Amma. Obviously, we work together. So my name's Amma. I'm the director of our Fuel Cell Innovation Centre. But I think that statement at the top is effectively two challenges. One's not geography specific, the challenges of developing sustainable technologies everywhere. But it's that GM piece. It's the GM piece. So why GM? You know, I suppose it's a question to all of you. The budget yesterday announced a potential innovation zone. Now, I think what we find in the UK is that we get put in competition with other regions. Happens a lot. And what does the panel see as the potential benefit that will sort of sort that challenge out, and why GM? If that made sense. And hydrogen is the best thing ever.
Absolutely. I think our core strength here in GM, I call GM it, we're in the Goldilocks zone where we're not too big, we're not too small, and we have an international airport that can connect us to markets which our friends in Birmingham don't have. So, so as I say, I think that we're the perfect size. It makes networking and connecting far easier, but then we do have our world-class universities. And remember as well, we have this heritage. We were the region that gave birth to the first industrial revolution. And I think together we're going to lead the fourth and the fifth. So I think it's heritage, there's all of that. And I think as a result of heritage, it left and imprinted something in all of us. And then we are just the right size in order to really be able to capitalize on that. And I think that's what makes us special.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Manchester's a great place to innovate, and got the right people, got the right attitude, and got the right work ethic. I'm not from the area originally. I'm from Gloucester. Been living in Manchester for near on 15 years now, and it's changed me, and it's changed me for the better. Manchester, people of Manchester are lovely. They care about people. They care about the environment. And that's what makes this a great place to innovate in clean tech. I think one of the challenges that we have that, saying that the announcement yesterday will help with, probably one of the limitations that we have in Manchester is that, you can access grant funding, you can access venture capital funding here. But once you go beyond sort of the kind of funding levels that a venture capitalist can provide, you're looking at a trip down to London and talking to large financial institutions, and it's a school tie network that we don't belong to. And that can make raising larger sums of money to fully launch these technologies an intimidating place to be. So hopefully announcements like this will help with that.
Yeah, just add, I think we've got a window of opportunity here. We're already one of the sort of world's leading cities in this space, but if we can progress close, to the target of 2038 and make some real strides, I think we could be, really one of the best cities in the world, and that will steal some of the investment and resource from London, and it will, we work really closely with Midas, Manchester Inward Investment Agency. So when businesses are looking to set up in the UK, we've got a really strong offer here already for them to come to Manchester, and we just want that to be even more of an easy choice going forward.
Fantastic. So thanks very much. I think that's out of time now. So thank you, Marilyn, Iain, and Dan. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, thank you for chairing the panel so brilliantly. Loads for us to take away there. And notes around urgency. Iain, I feel your pain with that 4-year process. If we're going to defeat the climate crisis, we need to go a little bit faster. And as Amma, by the way, Amma, who asked the question at the front here, I don't know whether you heard, is the director of the hydrogen fuel cell